Welcome back to another NewBeeCast. I'm your host, Goose, and in the studio today we have the one, the only, ZoeFPV.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the NewBeeDrone podcast.
Wow.
I think I'm in space.
Yeah. It feels like we're in space. This is like a dark room with like black walls and stuff.
Hi guys, I'm here too. DZ, thanks for the introduction, bro.
I forgot it again. We actually had to record this 2 times, and I still forgot. Still forgot it.
Ridiculous.
But that's okay. So Zoe, we got you here. How are you doing today?
Not too bad. I've been on my adventure the last 6 months, traveling quite a bit over the United States, and I've kind of landed here in San Diego, starting work at Hess Systems.
What's that?
They do stuff, military stuff, a lot of contracting work for the government.
Is that some kind of like hush-hush stuff?
Some of it, not all of it. A lot of the stuff that I'm doing is pretty open right now. I'm working on some drone platforms for them and developing out some new technologies.
Really?
If she tells you about it, she'd have to kill you, so...
That's fine.
No, if I tell you about it, they kill me.
That's also fine. Chris, do you object?
I mean, I'm not getting killed, so...
There we go. I think it's unanimous.
Do as you do.
Unanimous. Yeah. So, you're here in San Diego now. Are you permanently here, or are you just...
Yeah, permanently here. Yeah, no. And yeah, it's kind of funny. Like, I've been from the Santa Cruz area, and I've lived there for like 17 years, majority of my life. And so I've gotten really used to that area, and moving here to San Diego has been kind of an upheaval, but it's been nice. Like, this whole area is absolutely beautiful. You have great weather, great views, great stuff to do. You have amazing FPV groups. Like, just in the whole Southern California area, you have these small, like, eclectic little groups, and then you have the bigger get-togethers. And
we also have the biggest gas prices.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. With the RV, it sucks. I'm paying a lot of gas in the RV.
Your gas is basically like rent.
Oh yeah, no, it is. Seriously, I think right now my gas bill is like $400, $500 a month. I'm just like going around town. So.
Well, we'll get into the RV stuff in a little bit, but for a lot of people who don't know who you are, you want to kind of give a brief introduction and how you got into FPV or RC?
Yeah. So, for those that don't know, my stint in RC started about 6 years ago now, and I was laid up in bed with a bunch of medical complications. I couldn't sit upright. I couldn't really do anything, and I had to drop out of college. I dropped out of life. I couldn't ride a motorcycle. I was literally just depressed and needed to find a new hobby. And that's when a friend told me to go to a local hobby shop. And I went to the hobby shop, I looked around, and I eventually found this little nano, even before that, it was the Proto X, this literally micro, itty bitty tiny drone. Like, if you don't know what the Proto X is, it's like half the size of a tiny leaf.
Yeah.
So super tiny. And I got that because I didn't know if I would like flying drones. I didn't know if that would be something I'd be into, but I wanted to give it a shot. So I got that. I fell in love with it and almost destroyed it the first day I had it. So after bouncing it to the ceiling about 15 times, I went back to the hobby store. I bought a Nano QX, and I fell in love with that. I started flying on acro mode, which is really neat because there's not a lot of micros on the newbie scale end of that have an acro mode. And so at the time, the Nano QX is one of the few that actually flew really well. So after mastering that in a few weeks, I went back to the store, found this the bigger version, the 180 QX, and that was for sale for $200. And it's literally a $200 brushed build, which is kind of breaks my brain. So I was like, man, I'm gonna wait. And I went home. I did a bunch of research. I found FPV videos. I found flight test. I saw Alex on flight test flying his hexacopter, the Blackout 290, and I fell in love with that thing. I was like, that is so freaking cool, and it's so much cooler than those 4-motor bricks that are flying around. So I got the hexacopter, and
are you referring to like the Versacopter that Flight Test made?
Well, that plus the original Blackout Mini H.
Yeah, because those are literally like a rectangle with arms.
Yeah, no, it's pretty much a flying brick. And while it's cool, and while I do fly quads now,
for the time,
the hexacopter was just like, it had this extra cool factor.
Yeah.
And the way they fly is I wouldn't say completely different, but they definitely have a different feel than a quadcopter that I prefer over quad. But maintenance-wise, the hexacopter is so much heavier and has so much more going on that when you crash, it's a pain in the butt. So yeah, it took me about 3 months just to get the hexacopter built and flying. I kept having desync issues with the components I had. And at the time, I was a newbie. I had no idea what the heck a desync issue was. All I knew was that the motor would stop briefly and fall out of the air.
Now, was this BL Heli S or even before that?
Before that.
Okay.
This is before active braking.
Ah.
Yes. Yes.
Man.
Another.
Only the OGs will know that
Right?
struggle.
You're not
Yeah.
ready.
So what were you running on it? Clean flight?
I had no base flight. That was
Base flight? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I actually had an original Naze 32 that I bought from Japan directly from Time Cop.
Oh,
And I was so stoked to get that because I did research. I'm like, oh, it's so awesome. This dude invented this flight controller and he's selling it himself. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to pay the money. I'm going to get it from Japan. And
That was my first
wait the
FC
time.
too.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, so, and I still have that FC and it still works. Like the Naze 32, even though it's old, like Time Cop knew what he was doing and he was only releasing really high-end hardware that he knew you could trust. Anyway, so it had Simon K 20 amp ESCs, and that's where I went wrong. Is the ESCs I had at the time, well, 20 amp sounds a lot right now. Back then, like 8 amp and 12 amp was like the norm. And the 20 amp ESCs I had were kind of made for like bigger motors. So
Dude, our brushless Acrobee board coming out has more than 8 amps.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Like, for the time, though,
Yeah,
it was a
crazy.
lot. So the Simon K was kind of it, and it just had this desync issues. So I flashed it with BL Heli, and then I added active braking to it, and I was able to change the timing of the motors, and I finally got the machine working when I was in bed in the hospital, in a room recovering, and I was working on the machine.
What did the nurses and doctors think if you're like sitting in there trying to recover and you're like a mad scientist wiring and soldering and all this stuff? Were they like, yeah, you shouldn't be doing that here?
Not quite. They were kind of stoked to see someone was actually like doing something more than just watching TV, I think.
Oh, okay.
But they definitely scared them a couple times because the first time I went to go like power it up,
Yeah.
but hexacopter too, really loud. Like I powered it up, I went full throttle.
Oh no. Was that with props?
Without props.
Okay, thank God.
No.
You're like, yeah,
The second time I scared them was with props.
At
The
least
first
you would have
time-
already been in the hospital.
Yeah, not too far to go,
I was
right?
in a good spot for it. I go to take off, or no, I go to like spool it up. I do a full spool of all the motors to see if everything's working. So you've got 6 motors, 2 204s on 4 cell. I skipped 3 cell.
Good.
And it was so loud that the nurse, quote unquote, said it sounded like a pack of drills going off in your room. Like, just
Oh
like
yeah,
someone,
so
like,
many different motors.
it was great. And so eventually I got it working. I hovered it in the room briefly.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
It was like literally like 6 inches off the ground just to see if
That's
it worked.
amazing. It must have been so loud to echo in that
Oh
room.
yeah, it was.
Did they like bust in and go, what are you doing?
Oh yeah.
What are you doing?
It was
Recovering.
recovering basically, and still recovering in a lot of ways, sadly. But yeah, so the
They're like, you better not be flying Spectrum in there.
screws up their MRI machine. So yeah, it went really well. I finally got working. So eventually I was recovering with my cane. I had help getting out to the field. Someone put my drone down for me. I was able to lean up against a tree, and I flew it for the first time, and it was pretty magical. Like once you get past that moment of like not knowing how to fly, and it starts clicking a little bit, and you start having absolute control of the machine versus just kind of like trying to not make it crash. Once you get past that point, there's this magical moment where you start having the adrenaline rush, the whole sensation of freedom, and your brain just starts unlocking and you become one with the machine. Once I hit that with the hexacopter, it was over. Like, I was absolutely addicted. I was coming out every day, sometimes twice a day to go to the park to go fly, especially when I only had like 2 batteries at the time. and
Damn.
at the time too, like I could only be out there for a couple batteries at a time just because of my health.
Yeah.
So it was really like a therapy for me. So I'd go out and fly, come back home, charge, fly, charge. And that was my life largely for months. And then this is all before the first like drone race in the U.S. This is like back when FPV was like a really, really small, eclectic thing. It was just gaining some traction.
The Charpoo days.
Pre-Charpoo days. Yeah, like a lot of people are like, oh, did you get into it because of Charpoo? I'm like, no, blackout.
So that was like year 2 BC.
Did you hear that?
Sharpoo?
No.
Oh, okay, no.
Charpoo is he's a great influence. Like I definitely Charpooed my spider hex. If you go on RC groups, and if I keep forgetting,
I am ready. I'm looking.
I think my
now.
profile is Zelight, ZELIGHT. And there's a post of my Charpooed spider hex. So when Charpoo came out, I was definitely inspired by him, and I took the 45-degree tilt that he was doing, and I tilted my hexacopter, and I built a Mobius mount so I could actually get 45 degrees of tilt with the hexacopter. And no one was really flying hexacopters high tilt back then.
Sure, yeah.
So, and I could honestly say no one's flying them high tilt now.
No,
They're dead, unfortunately. So, yeah, in that post, I Charpooed my hexacopter. And funny, like the first post about the hexacopter, I'm even thinking about like mounting stuff upside down and like thinking about 3D stuff. And those are like years ago. So eventually and the RC groups was a large part of my life back then. It's like neat 'cause it's like a time capsule. You can kind of see the newbie I was back then and then see like basically where I dropped off of RC groups because I got too busy doing other stuff.
Yeah.
But and before the drone racing, eventually the first U.S. drone race was coming to America, and it just so happened to be in Santa Cruz, California, at the Drone Data X conference, and the AMA was sponsoring it. And I had saw the post for it about a month and a half before it was going to happen, and I thought, you know what? It'd be kind of fun to practice for that. So I did my best impression of Metal Danny, and probably a lot of people don't know who Metal Danny is.
Yeah.
But he's epic. He's one of
Whatever
my
happened to him?
inspirations. I don't know. I honestly, there's a lot of people in FPV I'd really like to sit down and chat with, like Blackout, Metal Danny.
We need to get him on the show.
Yeah, cause like Juzz even, like find out what Juzz has been up to. Like there's a lot of like old school OG pilots that kind of dropped off the map that kind of wonder what happened, why, and are they still flying, and you know, why did they drop off the map? If, for instance, the case of Blackout was really big at the time when I was getting into it. His last words were chicken sandwich on social media.
Really?
Yeah. So there's like this whole like, I know, chicken sandwich. It's the last thing he ever said. And that was really sad 'cause, like at the time he was like inundated by people. Essentially just wanting his frame. I know at the time he was dealing with health issues and he was having a hard time keeping up with production. Eventually he just kind of disappeared. But I really want to know why. Is he still out there? Is he okay? Because there's a lot of those people in this community. And the list I feel like keeps growing. But that's not how I got into FPV or who I am. On a tangent here.
I want to ask you real quick about an Instagram photo I just found on your profile because I'm doing some digging right now to ask you about some stuff. Now this is a Twitch 109 frame with a GoPro session on it.
Yeah.
And on there it says, "It looks so wrong, but flies so right." Now, that looks like a pretty heavy rig, but did it actually fly well, Chris?
Oh, yeah.
Check this out.
Yeah, no, I've got footage of that flying through a parking garage on my YouTube account.
And that thing goes like 80 miles an hour, don't it?
Without the GoPro.
Yeah.
But it still like had enough power to with the session.
Yeah, no, the Twitch 109, for those that don't know, it was probably, I honestly say, the first like true 250 gram like build back before the FAA was like, hey guys, 250 gram and don't need to register. And so that build was me kind of like thinking ahead of time, and so it weighs with the battery and without GoPro 249 grams, the 4S 1300 mAh battery. And it has 1407 motors, which produces over 700 grams of thrust per motor.
I'm actually impressed that you know the thrust.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because they're my motors. I had to know that stuff.
Oh really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. It didn't say anything about that in that post.
So yeah, it was
ZoeFPV motors.
Yeah, so that actually a whole another tangent on the motors. The 1407s, I never knew they were coming out when they came out. The company I was working with, B-Rotor, I gave them the okay for 2205s and 2010s, and they ended up using my logo on a bunch of different designs.
2010 2400 kV.
Yes.
I'm looking at the RC Group's post, and I just searched ZoeFPV, and there's like someone's like selling. I have a set of ZoeFPV, 2010 2400 kV motors, and they are ridiculous.
They're pretty powerful. So like back then, the whole thing with the 2010 stator was back before like large stators were a thing, and people were still in that 2204, 2205 hype, and basically the 2306 stator was just becoming a thing. The 2010 is super efficient. Mini Quad Test Bench did tests on it, and they found that per motor, it's about 5 amps more efficient with every prop they've tested compared to every other motor they had up to that point. And that was huge because the efficiency gain you had from even going to a larger stator was really counterintuitive. You go to a bigger motor, but it's more efficient. And that's because the stator design is completely different. Instead of going like the traditional pancake stators, we're going up in direction, which is a taller stator. And there's a fun equation that happens. As you go up, the surface area of the stator substantially increases with size, but the actual, the weight doesn't increase as much. So, for instance, the 2010 weighs as much as about a 2207. But the surface area of the magnets is about 20% more. So you have about 20% more effect on the outside of the bell housing, which gives you that efficiency and gives you faster switching times and faster spin-ups and more torque.
I'm going to need you to do me a favor real quick.
Yeah.
If you could stop being so smart, because you are making me and Chris sound very dumb right now.
Chris is keeping his mouth closed, so Chris does not sound dumb.
Yeah, no, he's plenty smart.
Just by the fact that we're not saying as smart of stuff.
I like turtles.
I like turtles too.
I think you are one of the most technically knowledgeable guests we've had on the show. That's very cool. I had to be honest, I didn't even know you had your own motors, to be honest.
I think that's a thing.
What?
Yeah,
I'll be honest.
And it's funny because I know Zoe and I know.
Yeah,
like how,
I know you guys. That's why I wanted you, because I know you guys are really good friends.
Yeah, and I know how
we're
so close. How technical she is and all the data she has and stuff. And like it's funny that you say that because a lot of people don't. I think a lot of people just don't know.
Yeah, like I'm super stoked to find out like you're like this in depth about it. Like I didn't have any idea. I thought you were just like I'm super into 3D, and that was your thing.
No. So for me, drones became went from being a racer to wanting more performance out of my machines. And to do that, I had to learn about the machines. So I learned all about the motors, stators, ESD technologies.
Do you have any like technical background of this, or is it all self-taught?
So like before I dropped out of college, I was a computer science major.
Okay.
So I have a bit of a technical background, and before I was in college, I worked as a director of technology for a small startup in the Bay Area. So like I have some technical background, but I mean, for me, I don't have like any inherent mechanical engineering background. It really comes from using HTML, CSS, PHP, a little bit of JavaScript.
I know that stuff too.
And that's really my old school background. But I haven't really used any of those skills getting into FPV, and really this is more mechanical. And from my mechanical background, I used to work on motorcycles at a co-op in Santa Cruz.
You're going to make Dell, like, he's going to be, like, right there, because you're like, I can't ride motorcycles anymore. I used to work on motorcycles. Dell's just like,
same thing.
I'm right there. I feel you. Preach, sister, preach.
Yeah, like,
you know what this feels like?
What?
You seen the cartoon Pinky and the Brain?
Yeah.
Okay, I feel like Pinky, and I'm looking at the brain right now. Like, the more stuff you tell me, I just see your brain getting bigger and bigger and, like, overwhelming me.
What are we going to do today?
Take over the world one motor at a time.
There you go.
Take over FPV. But I'm sorry, keep going.
Yeah, so, like, my background's kind of varied. And for me, drones kind of incorporates kind of multiple things. The art of flying them, the technical background of putting them together, the mechanical aspect of actually manufacturing and building them. And it's kind of a rabbit hole, because once you start getting down one and you figure one out, then all of a sudden you're thinking like, okay, how does the motor actually work? Okay, how does the sensorless motor actually work? And then I started working with IQ Motion Control. I should say I'm more of just their head beta tester. And I found bugs before they knew they were bugs. Like, before they even plugged in the motor to test it, I'm like, how did you fix X problem, which is a runaway event? And like, how did you know we had runaway events? Because you have a sensorless motor. And then they proceed to plug in the motor, and then it blew up on my workbench. We have since fixed all those problems. There's been 0 reports of people having their motors actually explode on them. So that has not been a thing since early testing days. But yeah,
that's good.
Well, so by explosion, I mean, and I should like clarify the technology behind the IQ Motion Control motors is that they're a sensored motor, and if you have an RC car background, you probably know sensor motors in RC cars. It's very similar to that. It's just a very much more precise sensor and a miniaturized version of it into something that can fit in a much smaller drone motor.
And it's still like a traditional brushless motor?
Yeah, still traditionally brushless. There's a few design changes in the way that the bell housing and everything else fits together. Like, there's a lot less slop in the bell housing, so even if you destroy the bearings, you're not going to have the bell get all loose and stuff. Which is nice. But the biggest thing is that the motors have the ability to spin up so quickly that the bell housing will expand by 20 millimeters of deflection. So think about like...
What? 20 millimeters?
20 mils.
Yeah, it's just like... so if it has like an 80 millimeter band, it's adding 20 millimeters to that band, so it just like blows up.
What, the metal is flexing?
Yeah, the metal literally expands out by 20 millimeters.
What, from like heat? Or
from speed.
That's 25%. That's a ridiculous amount.
So literally the motor spun up so fast on my workbench that it didn't catch fire. It didn't like do anything like that, but the mechanical bell housing actually expanded off of itself.
But it's not supposed to do that.
Well, because that went so fast. So in that instance, what happened was a sensor error where in the PID loop of the motor, because the motors actually have their own PID loops, which is different than traditional.
You know what my motors have? Nothing.
Well, what's really neat is like because they have their own PID loop, they can do some interesting things. Once they fixed the whole exploding problem, they added a bunch of safety features into the motor, and they've added the ability for you to turn those off. If you want to push the abilities of these motors to the point of them exploding, you can do that. You can turn up the RPM limiter on the motor and actually take them to limits you would not push a traditional mini quad motor. But the safety measures that are in place now that I'm testing are down to coil safety. So generally, if you've had cooked coils on your quads, that will be a thing of the past. The ESC and sensor, and then we'll actually be able to tell if the coils are getting hot and be able to throttle down the power going to the motor.
So does it have like a temp sensor inside the motor? Dang.
Yeah, so it has built-in temp sensor. On top of that, they're working on motor health. So say you damage the motor will be able to actually tell you how badly damaged it is.
That is cool. So if like hit something and you're like,
I don't know.
Feels, but I don't know.
You just push a button, and then it'll be able to tell you based on the resistances within the motor how much it's
That is dope.
Yeah.
That's sick.
So like in the real issue with IQ's technology is just mass manufacturing it right now. They're a small American startup out in Philadelphia, and they're like 3 people, 2 of them full-time.
Is it because it just requires like such high precision in manufacturing?
Yeah, that was the biggest issue with getting them manufactured. I don't know if I can talk about who they worked with because of NDAs, but
let's not talk about that.
But I can say that it took about 9 revisions of the motor, and 5 of those revisions were due to manufacturer defect.
Whoa!
Are the like tolerances really like tight and stuff?
Yeah, the tolerances are extreme, and it's to the point where the manufacturer they worked with actually had to upgrade some of their equipment to be able to work on these things.
Well, that sounds pretty cool. I mean, for the motor tech.
It is. So the really cool thing, and this is what I'm really hoping for, is that they're in talks right now to take this motor technology to a really large manufacturer to have it in basically all of their motors.
Do you know, are we allowed to say who that is?
No.
Okay.
I don't want to jinx anything yet.
Yeah.
You know, because like I've done that in the past.
Is it a company that makes like motors for FPV stuff already? Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, you have about like 4 manufacturers to choose from, and I'll just say the biggest, and they make the best quality motors out there. So.
Roger.
I'm not gonna say anything, but I think I know.
Yeah, I just within the community you can gather, but which is a good thing, because if we're going to be partnering up to bring a new technology to market, it really should be with a company that can scale it and deliver a high quality product.
Do you have any idea what, like, this motor sounds amazing, but it also sounds expensive?
Right now they're $88 a module, which is motor plus ESC, which is incredibly expensive.
I mean, I understand from a tech side point, but it's hard enough to sell people on $20 motors. So
this is the big thing, is that IQ has a problem right now, and the problem is perception. A lot of people, and it's probably due to me and Rotor Riot, because I brought Rotor Riot in to do like a whole piece on IQ's technology, and then they brought me in to test their technology. And the biggest thing is that the IQ motion control motors and modules, I shouldn't say they're motors, they are modules, because they do more than just drone motors. You can use them from gimbals with their robotics control firmware, and you can also use them for just general robotics.
So they are not just a FPV company?
Yeah, it's more of a general motor technology.
Okay.
And you can even use it for medical grade centrifuges, which is crazy. And then there's also new technologies that are enables, like... keep forgetting the specific word for it, but it's essentially I wouldn't say it's reactionless, but it's essentially a mechanism that allows you to do collective pitch with a single brushless motor without having any mechanical linkages.
What?
That's the whole point of collective pitch. How do you...
So the mechanical link, so it has a linkage system, but the way it works is that the motor is able to transmit micro torque pulses in a different direction.
That like flex the blades?
That flex the actual blades in a different direction. So with one motor, you can get full 6-axis control.
I wish everyone could see Chris's face right now.
That shit is next.
He was like,
sorry, that's next level. Like, I don't get impressed very often, but that
But that's the kind of tech that IQ enables, and that's the stuff that's going forward.
It sounds like some kind of military tech grade stuff.
No, not them, not yet. No.
But I'm saying, like, this is like stuff I would expect. No, like using torque pulses to change the pitch of a flexing blade. Like, that sounds like some like DARPA stuff,
Well, so the technology comes from the University of Philadelphia. I'm so bad. I feel so bad for the people that actually did this research, because if they're listening, I just butchered it for them. They essentially, it came from a lab, and it's the University of Penn State. Sorry.
Okay.
And it's really neat tech. They did an initial test of it about 7 years ago now, and since then, the technology that they had in the lab with the censored motors that Matt from IQ Motion's been working on, they've been able to commercialize that technology finally. And so, even though the module is being used right now primarily for drones, it has much more applications beyond just drone technology. And realistically, it's a proving ground, because IQ knows they have this world-changing technology, but to the world out there, it just sounds like you're another startup that says, hey, we have this awesome new tech that can do all these cool things, right? But now they actually have a module that's commercialized, that people have bought, and that can be tested against their claims. And it can show that, their module and their tech does do something completely different, and there's validity to their statements. So that, I think, is a huge deal for them, and a huge deal for technology in the market, because until you have that point of proof of concept, and then you have proof of market, then it changes things a bit, because now you can start getting investors on board to be like, okay, this technology could obviously change the market going forward, and we could own a huge part of that. And that's an interesting place to be.
Not to get off the subject or anything, but you know what I just realized?
What?
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're the only female pilot that has her own branded motor?
No. Mayon High has hers.
Oh, okay.
And then Miss Creature, I believe, has her atom bombs.
I do remember the atom. Okay, yeah. But still, it's very few. So that's
shout out to Ego Drift for doing that, by the way. That's really huge of a company to step up to sponsor female pilots. And even though I have no association with them, I'm super stoked that another company was like, heck yeah, we're gonna make some female sponsored motors that are based on their designs.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
Yeah, Christy is a good friend of mine, so shout out to Christy if you're listening.
Yeah.
I'll link it, be like, I mentioned you, listen, please.
And if you can't afford the IQ motion control modules, go buy Miss Creature's motors.
Yeah, what are they called? The atom bombs?
The atom bombs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And her Corolla that she has for sale right now for $3,200.
Oh, I thought you were talking about another FPV company that was selling a car.
No.
Do you know what we're talking about?
Yeah, she's been trying to sell her Corolla.
No. There's someone else trying to. We'll tell you later. We don't want to get into drama.
Now the viewers are gonna be like, "Oh, tell me!" All the comments are gonna be like, "Tell me what the hell."
If you guys want to know, just private message me and I'll let you know. I also found another thing on here that says you're Australian. Is it?
What?
Where did you find that?
Yeah,
someone said.
What site are you on?
Look, it says, been looking at FPV stuff.
Fake news.
I now get ads for Zoe, the 3D quad flyer on YouTube. She is Australian. It is the same kind of thing. That's not true?
Yeah. That
Fake
sentence doesn't even make sense.
I had to set the record straight.
It was on the internet, so
this was posted back in 2017.
No, I'm from the past and the future simultaneously. I'm a time traveler.
That's why she was killing it on the Saber
Beat
virtual
Saber.
reality.
Oh yeah.
Pizza,
Yeah, we have the new. Chris bought the new Oculus Quest.
I had to.
And we were playing Beat Saber, and of course Zoe comes in here, and she's a beast.
Yeah,
Beat
so
Saber.
If any of you are on VR and on the Oculus system, add me Bright Eyed. I'm up on the Oculusness, like on the daily.
Also, I did take an Instagram story of you playing.
Yeah, oh no.
No, it's when you're doing good. Don't worry.
No.
I only
How
got
could you
good...
tell if I'm doing good?
It didn't stop.
Okay. If you can't tell when you're doing good, then you can't tell when you're doing bad.
You're always doing good.
You didn't hear the.
It didn't stop.
So yeah, check out our NewBeeDrone Instagram stories if you guys want to see that. Actually, by the time they hear this, it'll be gone. Never mind. Yeah. So what I want to know now is you're a pretty popular pilot in the FPV community. There's lots of pilots.
Popularity is dying.
Not for long.
Yeah. We're gonna blow you up now. Anyway,
viral podcast.
What kind of made you? Because way back in the day, you were one of the bigger names out there, and you were a little involved with Roll. So how did you start getting more popular in the community? What did you do that kind of set you off?
So largely, I think it was after I won my first race in Santa Cruz. Going back to that race. I won that race. I prepped for it a month and a half. I went medal Danny in the trees, and
what kind of? It was just like a regular race.
It was the race. So basically, everyone that thinks of a current drone race, flags and gates, it all started with that. Because before multi-GP had the flags and gates and all this stuff, it was literally how they were doing it in Berkeley with flags and gates. Mm-hmm. It's the same kind of format that's been kind of known.
Yeah.
So I was flying a 290 Spider Hex through that race, and I honestly
that's a big puppy.
Damn,
yeah. But I was able to kill it in the straightaways.
And with a hex copter.
Dang.
Yeah, and so it was halfway through that race, I ended up smashing the front end of the hexacopter off.
Oh,
no.
And I superglued it back on.
What?
Yeah. I have a history of supergluing stuff. So I superglued it back on. I got it basically ready and back together, and I sent it for the last heat.
And it worked with super glue?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. So it was literally the front nose of the hexacopter that held the camera together.
Oh, I thought you meant the arms or something.
Oh, no. I got lucky on that one.
Oh, okay.
So glued the nose back on, I raced. It was down to Guru Nate, myself, and Steven. And Steven, moved to San Diego recently. So I ended up winning that. I was able to take them on in the corners and pass them in the straightaways and keep my lead. Steven crashed out. Guru Nate eventually crashed out trying to keep up. I crossed the finish line and won that. It was pretty cool. It was the first time I ever won a drone race. It was the first time I've ever been in a drone race.
And you were all bow down peasants.
No. Back then I was really more humble. I was like, oh, this is awesome. Cool, drone racing is awesome. I love drone racing. This is awesome. Isn't this cool, guys? Now I'm all cynical and shit.
Is it always this easy? My first race ever, I won.
So that kind of propelled me, and I remember thinking that footage was my I don't know. I just remember that footage being like the magicness. If I need to hold on to this footage. And so I uploaded footage from that, and then there's a reporter that was at the race for Medium.
Really?
Yeah, he did a whole article on it using my footage. That kind of started blowing up a little bit. And then I ended up going on the local news to promote FPV racing.
You know what happened to me after I won first in my class at an OCFPV race?
What?
They
took me to a restaurant I did not like.
Which isn't hard for Jameson. Jameson likes like 2 restaurants.
Have you ever tried to teach a news anchor how to fly in 5 minutes?
We've tried to teach people how to fly in days.
2 hours.
Have you ever seen a news anchor try to fly live on the air after 5 minutes?
Oh, this could be... Is there footage of this?
There's footage of this.
We're going to have to look
at
this.
Was this inside a studio?
There's literally footage of a news anchor flying a whoop, basically, into my hair.
I thought you were
and getting it stuck on air.
Oh, no. And they're like, what's this arm? They just leave it fall through.
Literally, so this is where I knew I was good for stage because I didn't freak out. I was just like, oh, this is natural. And I can gently walk over and help her disarm the quad that's now stuck in my hair.
What do I have to look up to find this?
Oh, jeez.
I want to find this.
Oh, jeez. I can't remember if it's on my old website.
News.
Maybe you just like Zoe News.
Order drone.
And there's there's just so many like articles and video stuff. I mean, obviously I got a lot of attention because I'm a female pilot. But a lot of the attention I think was largely because I was decent and I was actually not sucking at what I was doing.
Knew your stuff?
Yeah. And
I think your story also connected with a bunch of people.
Yeah.
I remember like when I saw yours talking about how it helped you through like some harder times.
Yeah.
Like that kind of stuff I think really resonates with this community. I think that's part of it for me anyway. I was like, oh, that's dope that she like used this for more than just fun. Like I just that's when I started seeing like some of the bigger picture with a drone because it's more than just a toy.
And I think largely those are the people that reach out to me. Like I know even in this area, I went to the Widowmaker and I keep forgetting his name, Surf Guru, yeah. He had back pain, a large amount of back pain, a large amount of back issues. And
he got barreled.
Yeah, he essentially told me my story was partially what got him into FPV. And when you hear that kind of stuff, you know, your brain doesn't know how to process it.
Right? How should I feel about this?
But it's really cool because I've heard that story a lot. And I think that's really kind of the magic of it because at the time my story took it from being just a toy and fun to being like a proper therapeutic outlet for people. And I even had stories of someone's doctor recommending they get into FPV.
That's dope.
Really?
Yeah.
What's the doctor's name?
I wish I knew.
We need to put him on a commercial.
Dr. Goose.
I wish I knew.
They call me Dr. Deezy.
That sounds like a different kind of doctor, Chris. PG.
But yeah, so it's really a neat outlet, and it's still a really neat outlet, I think, for people that want to have the same adrenaline rush of riding a motorcycle or jumping out of an airplane without the risk of jumping out of an airplane or crashing a motorcycle.
No, usually less death.
A lot of the people that end up, like, I've noticed getting into FPV now, especially since hearing my story and stuff, it's like, for instance, Metal Danny. For a lot of people that don't know Metal Danny and his story, he largely got into FPV for the same reasons. His body got mangled from racing motocross.
What's with all these motorcycle people in FPV?
Dell
is going to rage.
It's my fault.
Of course.
Because that was my original story. That was my original story. Like, I'm a motorcyclist in FPV. I was in the motorcycle community.
Let's get out of this.
But yeah, no, it's, I think really for motorcyclists, it's very similar to the same kind of sensations. You're putting on goggles, you're putting on a helmet, you're experiencing the world as it's coming at you versus kind of being locked in a cage, which I call people in cars cagers still because like it's a different experience than being on the back of a bike. And for motorcyclists too, I know a lot of them, it's a danger thing. Like after a while, you either become a parent and or you hurt yourself. And at that point in time, you have to make a choice. Am I going to try to get back on the bike and potentially hurt myself on this thing again? Or am I going to try to find a safer alternative to what I love to do? And it's a really hard choice for people, and it's one of the reasons why a lot of bikers will continue to ride even though they probably shouldn't be. And by that I mean like they're in too much pain, or they're, you know, have family and they run risky. Like I know a lot of people that would ride risky just because they're in a bad mood, and it gets them in a better mood. For those people, I largely believe FPV can be that replacement where you can fly risky, but you're not actually really risking anything,
right?
You know?
Full sending that throttle sticks, like pulling back on the throttle, you know?
It really much is. And I think it hits enough of those points in your brain to where when you are hitting that throttle stick...
It's like adrenaline.
Yeah, it is a pure adrenaline hit. So, you know, I think that's why a lot of people that ride are also into FPV.
So you used to have a bike?
Yeah.
What kind of bike did you have?
CBR 600. Yeah. And then before that, I shot on Shadow. But yeah, CBR was a cool bike. It was definitely ratted out. It was missing a lot of its fairings, and the engine was recently rebuilt. It had I keep forgetting the exhaust, but it just sounded amazing. Yes. Yes.
I know a little bike stuff. You know, I've always wanted to ride bike. I won't because of the risk, and like I've seen so many people like get paralyzed, or like it's just like I don't trust other drivers, you know. But
that's largely it. It's the other drivers. Like the biggest thing on motorcycles is you either get taken out because you drink and ride, which is a large percentage of motorcyclists.
Really?
And the second largest percentage is left turns. Other people taking a left turn when they don't notice the bike, and essentially you T-bone that other vehicle. And so those two things are the biggest. And largely, if you don't drink and ride, you're pretty safe. But that left turn, that's a, you know, literally get a left turn out of life and just ruins your life.
Yeah, like my mom had she had a friend, and their son, like for his 18th birthday, they bought him it was like a Ninja 250, I think, which is a really small, like pretty safe bike.
You can still screw yourself up.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't like go 150 on that thing, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway,
and to 70.
Yeah, he was at a stoplight, and he was like, you know, I don't really know the rules of riding, but I think in general, when you at the front of a line at a stoplight, you don't want to be right in the middle of the lane in case, like, you want to be kind of over to the side in case, I don't know, to get away or something. And he was. But the person that came up behind him, it was kind of a younger girl, and she was learning to drive stick in a Jeep Cherokee, and she just like didn't realize that if you leave the car in gear and pull the clutch out, it's gonna lurch forward, and it did that, and it bumped him into oncoming traffic, and he got like run over and killed. Just just like sitting there doing nothing. So like because of stuff like that, it's 100% not in the rider's fault. Yeah, you know, it's that easy. So, but having said that, I still think bikes are awesome. I love Ducatis, and I've always been really into like stunt riders that like have like the cage on the outside. And...
No, it's funny. Stunt riding compared to regular riding, I know people think it's dangerous. The most dangerous, I mean, you could probably break your back stunt riding, but generally stunt riders are only going like 5-10 miles an hour, and 95% of the time it's really easy to throw the bike.
Did you see the video Steele did where he was following a guy doing like that kind of riding? I would love to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that was what I was trying to get to with the CBR, but because it had a lowered gear, so I could actually have a lot more torque and pop it up, and it was fun until I couldn't ride anymore. But yeah, so motorcycles are fun, and they're a great escape, and FPV is a great replacement for it. And I honestly think, especially for those that are looking for an escape, getting an FPV is a good version of that. It's safe. It's generally not going to hurt yourself or anybody as long as you're smart about it. And that's largely due to propellers. If you get a NewBeeDrone set up, it's especially the Acro Bee, you're not hurting anybody.
Like, your hair.
Your hair, yeah. You live on news.
Yeah.
You know what? I have never gotten a whoop stuck in my hair because right now my hair's not long enough. But when I had longer hair, we were testing the brushless. And the freaking brushless got stuck in my hair with the 802 motor, and that thing hurt. It yanked out my hair. I was like, son of a...
You went in the bathroom looking for scars, and... Did I get any battle scars?
Looking for a chunk missing? Right. Like, Jesus. We can use that for the next little wig on the Acro Bee. Hold on here. Yeah. So, are you sponsored by any companies right now?
This is...
Or have you ever been sponsored? Or
my sponsorship game has been interesting. So eventually, after the first race, I was sponsored by Multi-River Superstore, and shout out to them for being my first sponsor. They're no longer around, but shout out to them anyways. Yeah, literally pouring one out for my homies.
Yeah.
But from there, I don't know, sponsorship game has been interesting. So I donated my hexacopter, my whole setup to the AMA Museum, and then I was given a new setup to fly with goggles that had lesser field of view than I was used to.
What kind of goggles?
They were like the old school Predator V1s, I think. Oof. It was pretty bad. I didn't know the difference at the time, so I was like, okay, sure, I'll donate and get some new goggles. And that was like 2 weeks before Drone Nationals.
Whoops.
So I performed horribly during that event, and that was like my first real big opening to the drone community. And then also at that event, I was really upset that none of my times got recorded. And no one told me that my times weren't getting recorded through the day until after party when the judges came up to me like, hey Zoe, none of your times got recorded today.
You didn't think to tell me this before?
Yeah, I was very
Was that back in the day we had to still have the transponder on the actual drone?
Yeah.
Oh jeez.
Yeah, I was very safe or very good about placing it and stuff.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, it was upsetting. But and then what was more upsetting is they put on the website DNF. Which is really like,
come on,
like
insult
to injury,
right.
Yeah.
And then that was actually used against me by
who did it? Tell me right now.
DR1.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah. Shameful.
Because I wasn't good
Shame
enough,
on you.
and I wasn't active enough, and blah blah blah.
I'm really gonna let Chris do something for me.
So but it was a pain, but so that was really what I was introduced to. Like after Drone Nationals, I got a lot of media exposure. There was like 2 different camera crews that were following me for Drone Nationals. And that's kind of what got me more popular at the time. And but realistically, what the popularity came was when I started flying with Rotor Riot for a couple episodes. And
was the first one you did the 3D?
Yeah.
Here, go try it.
Ironically happened right after the DR1 issues.
was that where you were at this one location? It was kind of the ocean was on the side. You were up in the hills or something.
Yeah. So like, what happened with that event or whatever? So like, okay, DR1. I was supposed to be a pilot. They pulled me last minute from being a pilot in the race. I ended up going and racing, or went and did a freestyle event thing with them, anyways. And the freestyle event thing got cut.
Whoops.
My mom was very upset after I got kicked out of the pilot tent by the director.
Why?
Because I wasn't a racing pilot.
Aww.
And my mom started crying. And so we left. And then I was like 2 hours out of LA when Chad Capper called and like, Zoe, where'd you go? I'm like, dude, like they kicked me out of the pilot tent. I don't want to be here. I'm going home. Come do an episode with us, please. And so I was like, fuck it. I like Capper, I like the crew.
Papa Kappa?
Papa Kappa.
That's what I call him.
So yeah, I went back down to LA and filmed those episodes, and it was a good deal of fun. And yeah, then after that, just went on to compete with Drone National 16. I didn't do so good there due to sponsor issues. And this is, again, going back to the sponsor thing. So I've had a lot of issues with sponsors in the past, and I'm trying to be a little bit more careful going forward. Is that I needed batteries, and my sponsor wasn't able to get me batteries at the time that I needed. So I literally went to the start line with a battery that had a dead cell, and I went and took off, and halfway through my performance, I had to land. So I still got 5th place, which was great, but it wasn't good enough to go to Drone Worlds, and I was really disappointed.
Damn, just a battery holding you back.
Right.
Yeah. And so this is, again, where sponsorship is kind of like a double-edged sword. At the time, I was sponsored by Airviews, which was great. I love Airviews still to this day. Everyone there was great, besides maybe one person. And I basically went to the head of Airviews like, look, I know I can get to Drone Worlds if I am able to get to the Aloha Cup. They have a last chance qualifier. I know I'm good enough to do this. Believe in me, and I'm going to make this happen. This is also after Drone National 16 aired on ESPN2, and I was crying because they literally interviewed me as I'm crying, and the judge is like, I'm sorry, Zoe, just not going to get to go to Drone Worlds.
Wow, they interviewed you to do that?
Yeah, they aired that happening, that moment.
Wow.
And I was like, and I went and watched it at a Wingstop with my friends and family.
At least you had good wings.
It was good wings. But it was just funny because I didn't know they had that in the show, so I was really like blindsided by it, and so that's what like fired me up to like really avenge. Yeah. And so I kicked butt in Aloha Cup. I took second place. Nice. I got into Drone Worlds, and that was like a week of competition, and then Drone Worlds took a giant shit on itself. Damn. It was bad. It was like...
Are they no longer around?
No.
Because I'll be honest, I had never even heard of that before.
Yeah, no. DSA, Drone Sports Association, is pretty much dissolved. I mean, Drone Worlds was their last event. There's a lot of drama around it. It was really sad because the racing portion of it was a complete mess, but the freestyle portion was actually not too horrible. Like, all the pilots got their runs besides one pilot who didn't show up on time to actually do their runs. And that's just one pilot. When you think of events, generally there's more than one person that gets royally screwed over.
Yeah.
And that was on them, not the event. So it was really sad because the cameras were turned off for Drone Worlds. The Drone Worlds event was going so badly, ESPN didn't even like bring out cameras to start filming it.
Nah.
And so my whole like story of like taking second place at Drone Worlds in the freestyle competition never really got out there.
But them telling you didn't make it did.
Oh yeah.
What?
Of course.
What?
That's how life goes.
That's how it works. Yeah.
That's how life goes.
What? You know what?
You're gonna broadcast your worst moments, and then no one's gonna see you at your best.
It's okay. We see you. You've seen Avatar, right?
Yeah.
I see you.
Yeah, I see you.
I see you. That wasn't creepy.
So that was a fun thing. So sponsorships, going to that.
Damn you, Chris.
After like last year, Airviews basically cut all of their pilots, and
Why was that?
Restructuring of the company. Basically just trying to change stuff around to make sure they stay afloat.
So for me, I'm asking for a friend, and maybe some viewers who don't know, Airviews is like, they were trying to be like the YouTube of FPV, right?
Basically the way, at least I gather now, is they're trying to be like the place to go for the drone community, at least for content. And it's actually pretty cool. Like when I was leaving, they were actually adding a bunch of really neat features to the site that kind of make it good for drone pilots. So like on YouTube, especially now, if you watch a drone video, generally it'll kind of link you out of the drone world back to other larger videos.
Yep.
On Airviews, it's way more relevant.
Didn't Rotor Riot make some kind of site that was supposed to be like that too, where they hosted videos?
They went with Airviews. They were like sponsored. So like the Bach Grinder or Rotor Riot Presents was sponsored by Airviews.
No. I mean, I thought Rotor Riot made like a separate website for like hosting videos or something like that.
I don't know.
I have to look that up. I'm pretty sure.
Well, I know they posted their content to Airviews, at least semi-recently.
I'm gonna ask Chad right now while we're talking.
Tell him I said hey. So yeah, like the Rotor Riot Cruise, pretty neat. Lisa was pretty neat back then, and it's pretty neat now. It's just different. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier about OGs.
Yeah.
Cycling out. And this is coming back to sponsorship. I know a lot of OGs get burned out on sponsorship because realistically sponsorship hasn't been what a lot of them have needed to stay competitive. And sponsorship can go anywhere from being, hey, you want to get sponsored by us for frames? Great, now you get a bunch of frames, but now you have to pay for all the parts to build the frames out.
Right.
And now
like we gave you an expense, pretty much.
Yes, and that's largely what's happening. And largely what's happening for a lot of pilots too is that they're basically becoming Mary Kay sales ladies for the drone industry. Except you don't get a giant pink car after you sell so much,
Giant pink car.
And it's maybe that's a really kind of gruesome description of how it is right now, but that's largely how it is. And when I was getting into it originally, and this kind of all ties back together, after winning that first race, the race organizer approached me and said, Zoe, in 6 months from now, you'll be able to make this your full-time job and make a living from this. And that's what I thought sponsorship was going to be, and I thought that's what sponsorship was going to be about. And so at the time, that's where I really put my focus into it, because I thought, this is what I love to do. I love tinkering, I love building, I love the mechanical end of it, I love every aspect of this. I want to do it full time. So I'm going to put all my energy into it, especially considering I'm still pretty handicapped. And this is a great outlet.
I have an update from Chad, if you'd like to hear.
Yes.
So they do have some. It's called megadronestars.com. And it was.
Oh, that's him.
Do you remember this?
Yeah, Megadrone Stars.
Yeah, so I think it's basically like Rotor Riot's attempt at. But it brings like YouTube, podcasts, Instagram. So it brings like all media content to one.
Every time I hear Mega Drone Stars, though, I think of like Mega Porn Stars for some reason.
So. We can cross
this is not a bash on Mega Drone Stars or anything.
It's a bash on my kinky brain.
Okay, yeah. Oh, also, Chad says hi back.
Hey, Chad. I love you.
Yeah.
Don't forget about
hi, Papa Kappa.
And so, yeah, that's Mega Drone Stars. So yeah, getting back to sponsorship, the whole industry really wasn't panning out to be what I was hoping it was going to be. And kind of what was essentially promised to me.
Look at this. When you go to the personality section on the site,
look at you
in the top second row.
Next to UAV Futures.
Today!
Oh, and Metal Danny was right under you.
Yes.
Nice.
That's good organization.
You're above Mr. Steele.
That's at least one place I'm above Mr. Steele. Well, that and standing next to him. Sorry.
Badum, knee slapper. Burn! You want any ice cream with that?
I didn't say it.
I'm sorry, Mr. Steele. I love you.
You want any ice for that? Burn!
But yeah.
Can we get some Bengay in here,
please? Some ointment.
Yeah. So that's the whole thing too. Like even seeing like the greats like Matty Stunts for a while, he was struggling to make it work within the drone industry. And then he kind of bounced off to be I think he's a car salesman now at Mercedes dealership or something. Matty Stunts.
Oh, Matty Stunts.
Yeah.
Because how would you say Johnny FPV's doing? I mean, I don't even know.
Well, Johnny's doing it, but Johnny's always had independent wealth through his family. So like he's been able to really go out and pursue FPV with financial support to the point where now he can make it his full-time job.
Yeah.
So like that's awesome.
Yeah,
like I'm super excited for that kid because he makes some great content.
Yeah. Like it's I think it's so much easier to like fully pursue an avenue when you don't have to like dedicate 9 hours a day to like just financially supporting your living situation. So like if you have that freedom, he's a great example. That's how far you can really take things. And
that's
like you said, he makes amazing
wall
content.
That I was getting up against is that I was trying to make this my full-time job. It wasn't, paying the bills, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And at the same time, in order for me to be competitive, especially now with all these fast AF kids that are making this their full-time job.
Kids.
Because they have the time to do it.
Yeah.
It's hard to stay up with that. So unless I'm flying full time, it's really hard to stay competitive. And I'm still trying to get back to that, but again, I'm kind of transitioning out to do other things at this point.
Yeah.
But I will say I'm going to make a return at racing. It's going to happen. I've been getting out to the field last week and a half or so, and actually like practicing, so it's
you might want to try this
different
up and coming awesome ESC I've heard. It's called the Infinity 4-in-1 ESC.
Is that the one from NewBeeDrone?
Yeah.
I'm gonna try it.
Yeah, so maybe I'll hook you up with one.
Oh yeah.
See what it can do.
Yeah, it's and basically I want to get back to giant drone racing. Eventually.
X-Class.
Yeah.
Let's talk about X-Class.
Oh no.
So X-Class, for those of you that know,
oh no,
it's like the biggest size of class drones you can race, I guess, or that's even like being made right now. So tell us how you got into X-Class, because like you're known for X-Class stuff, just like 3D stuff.
Yeah. So X-Class. This is actually good. A lot of the stories we've had today overlap. So going back to Drone Worlds, actually, Drone Worlds is supposed to have the world's first giant drone race. And they were supposed to do like a long-range endurance race over Hawaii. And at the time I heard about it, I was like, this sounds awesome.
Right.
So I had poked my sponsor, B-Runner at the time, hey guys, can you send me some parts to build out a giant rig to go fly in this event? And so they did. And then the event was canceled. So I didn't build it out at the time, but the team that did, Team Von Drone, at the Team Von Drone with Reiner, primarily at the wheel hold, he really kind of pushed it with Kevin Sellers, and they brought their BFD, BFD. Big.
Yeah.
Okay, I was like,
okay. It was an octocopter. It was Kevin Sellers' personal setup. And at the time, it was really funny. If anyone knows Freedom Class. Freedom Class at the time was saying, hey, we're going to build giant racing drones. We're going to make this happen. And it was really an idea versus an actual reality. So the head of Freedom Class literally challenged Kevin Sellers to take his rig through a racing gate, a regular 5-inch racing gate.
Oh.
And so Kevin Sellers, during the demo in Hawaii, was like, screw this, I'm going to take it through a racing gate. So he actually nailed it through this racing gate with maybe like 6 inches on either side to spare. And everyone was like, whoa!
Yeah.
Like the first time you saw Charpu go through a gap.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I mean, it was pretty spectacular. And so people, started to get the idea that giant drones could be cool if it was done right.
Yeah.
And so we came back from Hawaii. DSA was literally falling apart. I didn't really want anything to do with them. Nobody in the industry, I think, really wanted much to do with them at the time. And a few of us that were in the giant drone racing were like, hey, let's do a giant drone race. And so I contacted Tattoo at the time, which was one of my sponsors. I said, hey, Tattoo, let's do a giant drone race. And so they're like, hey, yeah, let's give you some batteries, give you some flags. And we brought my rig out, built it out.
Did those make it in time? Did the batteries make it in time?
Yes, that time they did. That one was a little bit easier because I actually drove to their office and confiscated them from Rainbow.
Confiscated. These are mine now.
Pretty much.
You made these?
And Rainbow at Tattoo, if you're listening, I still love you guys. You were awesome.
Are you guys broke up now?
Yeah. Oh. China Hobby Line stole me away and then broke my heart.
Dang. So. Hey, well, you know what? This could become like a Dr. Phil or a Jerry Springer kind of thing, where we bring people back together. Although I think it usually ends kind of bad.
It usually is.
On those shows.
Yeah, so the whole drone race went really well. We got great footage from it, and I edited together this demo of the footage, and it really gained a lot of traction at the time, and people really saw okay, this has something more than just regular 5-inch drone racing. And it gained popularity. It was the first thing to ever be called X-Class, which was my video.
So
nice.
What is it about X-Class? Because, I mean, when you get that much physically bigger, I mean, this is 5 times or 10 times the size of a 5-inch quad. So it's not going to be as maneuverable and as fast because it's physically bigger. So what is it that...
faster and almost as maneuverable.
Faster in the sense of straight line fastness? Because...
at this point in time, mini quads are having a hard time keeping up with chase footage when an X-Class rig really lays on the throttle.
I think it probably depends on the course though, because all the courses that are set up for multi-GP, you couldn't do an X-Class in that, So.
Yeah, you have to have a specialized course. That's the biggest issue is X-Class, since it's kind of grown, the gate sizes are weird and kind of, I'd say almost. The word I'm looking for, really give you the wrong perception. So a traditional mini quad gate's 5x5, right? Mm-hmm. 250 millimeter. Well, an X-Class gate is 10x10, and we're running with 1,000 millimeter rig, right?
That's kind of funny though, because it is definitely more than double the size of a 5-inch quad. So that's way less space.
That's what I'm saying.
4 times.
So it's deceptive. It's very deceptive. That's where I'm looking for.
That gate's big, but
it's not that big when you're going 140 miles an hour around the course, and the machine doesn't like to make twitch movements.
What's the durability like for the X-Class?
Horrible.
Okay, that's what I figured.
It's a lot of mass.
One class and you're just done. So the average. I would say the average for a fairly decently priced racing rig is $300 to $400, all in. What do you think it is for an X-Class?
So it varies quite a bit. Last season, my rig that I was running cost $600. I was going really budget end because I wanted to prove that a budget-sized machine could do it, because most people are running F1000.
What is the frame cost? I have even no idea.
So the Dysonian, what's it called again? The Vixen frame. That frame you can buy all together for $200, or you can buy it as a kit for just the metal for $99, and then you get to print out your own parts. But X-Class frames can vary from cheap / something you make at Home Depot to $500.
Oh, the arms are metal.
Yeah. So
why is that?
So there's a lot of back and forth with why arms are metal in X class, at least why it's traditional. They bend back, they're lighter, it's easier to build, and since the Dysonian arms, they're actually machined into a single shape, so the motor mounts directly to the metal.
Yeah, like it looks like they pinch it at the bottom and make it flat.
Yeah, and so then we also have another way of making it hexagonal at the other end. So the arms can actually be put in a traditional frame. They can put into a round tube frame. Like the new arms are actually kind of universal. You can use them on almost anything.
Yeah.
But the reason for that is, one, that arm is like $12 when you have to buy it, so it's super cheap to replace. And if in a pinch, metal, especially the aircraft grade aluminum we have, will tend to bend back. So if you bend an arm half the time, you can bend it back.
It's funny you say $12. It's pretty affordable, but you know, we got people, we got like for instance the TBS, the Source 2, which is a racing rate. It's like $24 for the whole thing, but it's crazy how the cost of stuff has come down.
Well, so the biggest thing is that it's an X-Class rig, and I worked with them, Dysonian, on trying to make a really cheap setup, because X-Class tends to evoke expensive. And if expensive tends to evoke not reachable.
Have you seen any X-Classes that have like all carbon arms?
Yeah, there's a couple. They tend to be square tube, and they have, and this is the thing, is the motor mounts. When you use like a square tube carbon arm, you have to build a motor mount around the carbon arm to mount the motor to.
Like just looking at how big this is, like if you had a flat carbon arm, like it would probably bend a lot, huh?
That's the other issue. So yeah, generally you have to go like carbon tube. You can't really do carbon arms flat.
Too long.
And not to mention expensive and just...
How big of a sheet you need for that, you know? Jeez.
Quite a big sheet. And probably like 12 mil thick.
Oh.
So
12 mils. Jeez.
You can't put 6 mil with these arms. You'd be flexing too much.
Yeah, we're gonna need like a 30 mil size M3 bolt for the motors.
Good luck. And
so that's kind of why the designs have gone with the arms they have, is that it just makes more sense that size to do the hexagonal arm or the rounded arm that they have.
And like the whole thing has like a vacuum formed canopy around the whole body.
So that canopy was designed by Eli in the Bay Area. He's I think he works for Telefuga now, making flying cars. It was a limited edition canopy. It's really neat. It's kind of funny. After X-Class, there's a whole story with the canopy. If anyone from X-Class is listening, I'm so sorry if I'm mentioning this, but when that canopy was developed out, it was with the idea that X-Class is going to be going to canopied rigs, and that you'd be required to have a canopy. When the regs came out, the canopy, I was told, wasn't big enough for what they wanted, and so I went a whole different direction and made the Squid Boy.
Squid Boy?
Yeah, which is what ended up on Rotor Ride, the giant, like, alien-looking
canopy
with the fin in the back.
Oh, yeah!
Was that foam?
No, that was TPU.
Oh, okay. Damn.
Yeah.
That is a big print.
Yeah.
How long did that print take?
I think it was like 40 hours.
Ooh. Leave it.
Yeah. Thank you, Old Gravy Lake, for that.
Keep checking in every day.
Yeah.
Still good?
Still
good. All right.
Pretty much. So yeah, that was, and then that canopy was awesome. I loved it. It worked really good in turns. And actually, the fin really helped you kind of gain vertical stabilization or horizontal stabilization, and you could take turns a little bit tighter. But
I'm a fan of fins.
It just added drag, and quite honestly, what really upset me was that they then changed the canopy rule to make it so that the original canopy would have been just big enough, and that, oh hey, a few of the racers this season that don't have canopies, they don't get docked points. So now that you have a canopy and you have all this aerodynamic drag, you have to compete head-to-head with those that don't, and now it becomes a bit of a... It was kind of disheartening, because I spent hundreds and hundreds of hours on canopies. Like, I had spent so much time developing them out just to hear that they don't matter.
So you did all the 3D design for that yourself?
Yeah, the Squid Boy was sculpted in an Oculus Rift.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yo, that is an interesting idea for doing, because Chris uses Autodesk, right? Or Fusion 360.
Yeah, you can bring that into Fusion 360 and vice versa.
Dude, do you think you can use your Oculus Quest?
I'm about to find out today.
I'm
pretty sure the Oculus Quest uses Oculus Media, which in that case you should be able to.
Chris is getting... I see some sparks going on inside his head right now.
Head.
He's about to be the brain now. That is really cool.
Yeah, so the first thing it is, I actually imported a model of the drone without the canopy into Oculus Medium. Then I hand sculpted the canopy over the virtual model of the drone.
My mind is like being blown right now.
Yeah, I'm about to like leave and start working right now on a canopy.
Yeah, sorry guys, Chris just left all of a sudden. I don't know why. 5 minutes you hear this. Yo,
It's done.
And it's funny because like I made a bunch of like, especially with Oculus Medium, what you can make like sub parts. So I made like different types of fins and stuff. So I was getting to the point where I can mock up different canopies in like a couple hours, and it was really fun.
You know what?
I love that.
You know what?
Sick.
Is there anything you don't know? You better tell me right now, because I need something to nitpick. I got nothing.
I don't know much about AI yet.
Well, neither do I.
But like I even started like looking up how they make processors. Like the CMOS chips in our cameras are essentially the same thing as a microprocessor in our computer.
You better not be lying to me, because I'll feel like a fool for believing.
No, I'm serious. The CMOS. It's just the way they make it. So the like I'm not even going to it. We're not even
the wafer.
Just.
We got some snacks. I know about that.
Like I don't know. I like going into diving deep into the technology, because like now that motors are not mysterious to me, now that propellers, like I've even worked on propeller designs.
That's a nice way. They're not mysterious to me anymore.
Well, I don't know. It's like for a lot of people, you see a drone and you look at it and you're like, that thing is magic. Like, what the hell is all this
stuff? It's like a magic
doing?
unicorn.
Kind of.
We'll have to talk about that too before we're done.
A 3D sparkle.
No, I mean your unicorn.
Hopefully it comes out one day.
One day. You want to talk about that now?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So you have your own frame finally. Is it your first frame?
No. So this goes actually back to the sponsor thing, weirdly enough.
Which sponsor?
All of them. So I've been sponsored by like 3 different frame manufacturers in the past.
Are you allowed to say who?
Sure.
You want to.
I'm just curious.
So Excalibur, for example, that was Bullet Drones.
Don't know that one.
They're a small company. Essentially, they courted me and like, hey Zoe, I want to. Yeah, no, they hit me up and like, hey, I want to work with you on a frame project. Blah blah blah. You know, I'll give you some of the profits. Blah blah blah. No profits ever happened, and nothing ever came from it.
Looking at Bullet Drones on Google gives me not.
Yeah,
frames.
it's probably not.
The Pentagon successfully tested a mini drone swarm.
I don't think that's it.
Autonomous killer drones.
Definitely not it.
Yeah, not yet.
Anyway, go on.
So I didn't really see much from that project, nor did I really have a lot of input into the frame design versus just, you know.
I would like 4 arms. Okay, that's it.
Yeah, please.
That's enough creative control.
Yeah, hold motors.
And, you know, for most pilots, like that's as much as it goes. If you're working with the manufacturer, you have very little input. You just get given the frame, you get to give feedback. But I wanted, you know, something more from that, and then Raggy hit me up.
Oh yeah.
And they wanted to work with me on a frame, and eventually Rotorite hit Raggy up, and then Raggy hit me up to help them finalize their frame to sell the Rotorite, and then they told me I was going to get a cut of that, and I never got a cut of that.
What?
Yeah. So
I think Zoe needs her cut.
And then Rotorite, and this is the sad part, Rotorite then wanted me to push the frame to sell for them and them. So like I don't get any cut of that. And then it's not even a 3D frame. Like it's not what I primarily wanted to fly. So I got super burnt out on that, and I was like, screw going with all these like other companies. I want to do something on my own. And that's when I hit up my friend Stingray FPV, and we started working on the unicorn frame. And I should say, even before that, I was hit up by another designer that wanted to work with me on a frame. He sent me his idea of what he thought my frame should look like. It looked like a clone of the Blackout Mini H. I told him as much. I said, no, we need to do something different. Here's the design that I want to be made. And it was the original unicorn design. I waited 4 months for him to be able to nail that out. He never was able to actually design that. And
4 months is silly.
Yeah,
you know how long that would take Chris to make?
Tomorrow.
Yeah, probably. It's a pretty simple frame, really, once you understand the concepts behind it.
And now that you can do it in the Oculus?
Oh, don't do it. Watch.
You can't. Well, I haven't really. So the Oculus is good for soft modeling. It's not really good for hard body. So you do the soft
Maybe
modeling
just, like,
Oculus, and then you bring it into the.
Probably be tiring.
After a while.
I'm okay with this.
So the.
Chris, what are you even working?
Chris, have you lost weight today?
Sure have.
It's like a puddle of sweat under your desk.
Yeah, so I just kind of got bored, or not bored, I just
out.
upset working with companies.
Yeah.
And realistically, I wanted to have my vision made. I realized the only way I could have it made to my standard was to kind of go out on my own to do it.
Lens crafters?
I have special eyes. But yeah, so I hit up Ray, and then so we worked on the frame. This is like the third revision.
Ray-Bans?
Stingray.
Oh, okay.
My friend Ray.
We were talking about glasses, so you know.
This is a drone podcast, yeah.
Whoops. We'll be right back after these words.
And we're back with drones.
Drones and
stuff.
Yes. Anyway.
Yeah, so I've been in the process, and it's actually a lot more strenuous than I thought, because going back and forth through the revisions, and then now that I moved away from Santa Cruz, I can't, hang out with Ray as much just to sit down and do the revisions. That it's taken a while to get done, but now I'm at the point where their final revisions are being done, and it's going to get to the point that hopefully it'll be released in the next month and a half, 2 months.
Ooh.
And I have a whole plan on how to release it. It's just literally to the point where I want the quad to not break instantly when people fly it. I've spent over 2 months personally testing out revision 3 and crashing it into boulders in Colorado and destroying it in Utah, and now racing with it here in San Diego.
I remember you telling me something about the frame last time we talked about this with that service thing. Is that still a thing that's going to happen, or you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so...
Because I think it's a first. I don't know if it's a first.
I think it is. I think the way that I'm going to do it is going to be a first. Yeah. And I don't want to talk about it just yet.
Okay, that's fine.
Because I feel like it could be swooped.
Sure.
And I don't want to be swooped.
No swoop to whoop.
I'll wait until after it happens to get swooped.
Yeah. Because it will.
It will. It's a good idea.
Because then you'd be like, oh, so now that you saw mine.
Yeah.
Got you.
And now that you understand how to shut down the clone market while still giving a high quality frame to your customers that they don't have to pay an arm and leg for. Wow.
Okay.
So, and that's a big thing. It's releasing the frame. One, it will be open sourced when it does get released.
Gonna release those DXF files?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, part of that is I want people to be able to make their own mods for it, and I want to create a healthy aftermarket community for it.
Sends the brain 3D?
Yeah.
They'll be like...
He'll create a bunch of cool stuff for it.
He does really good stuff.
He's really cool. I've worked with him in the past.
They're actually one of my sponsors.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I gotta give him a little...
Brain 3D is really neat.
Yeah.
I've worked with him on a few projects in the past.
Mr. Brian.
Yeah.
Good guy.
So yeah, that should be coming out. I'm pretty happy with the way that's coming together. It's the design of it is really different. If you look at the way the rail system is done on it,
I like the spikes.
The spikes are cool. I really have not broken a unicorn horn since I've flown it.
Because the horns are made of magic, right?
I think so. I've broken a bunch of other things on it, but the horn has yet to be something that's actually...
Are the horns... I haven't seen it in a while. Are they the metal? The aluminum?
So I'm going to probably be offering an aluminum upgrade kit.
Okay. Because
right now the price, I want to try to get down to something that's cheap enough that I can actually compete on the market with.
Right.
But still, if people want the option, have the option. And it really is an option because it adds 15, 16 grams of weight to the frame. But it also makes it dang near indestructible, which is nice.
That's cool.
But for me, I really wanted a lightweight freestyle frame, so all up it weighs 105 grams, which for a top mount,
built?
GoPro,
Wow.
Well, with the frame built,
Yeah.
And then so it's, it's not quite racing frame weight, but for a freestyle frame when
you
most
want a
frames
little extra
are,
weight for momentum and all that, right?
Yeah, but not on my frame. Because, so the other issue is a lot of freestyle frames tend to have really beefy, thick arms that obstruct the or airflow.
Shout out Laughing FPV. That's Brady if you didn't know.
And so I went with 6mm thick arms,
Dang.
but at their thinnest point, it's 6 by 6 millimeters. So it's really thin at the thinnest point of the arm.
Yeah, Chris, what was the thickness on the racing frame we're working on?
5, I think, for the arms.
Yeah. And from 5, I was like, damn.
Yeah.
So.
And it adds a lot of weight. Once you start going to 5 and 6 mil arms, you'd be surprised how much extra weight it adds. So, the unicorn is 6 mil arms, and it weighs less than most 4mm frames that are out. I think it weighs less than all 4mm frames.
Is that because of the magic?
One. Partially. I think it's just due to the design. The way that the design's done, it has no bottom plate, really.
You mean the magic design?
The magic
You got to
design.
work on your marketing, Zoe.
I don't like to be a hype beast. I like to talk about the real stuff, not the hype.
You can hype real stuff.
It's going to be magic.
Nah, let's go with your plan.
And it's actually the first frame that was designed for the IQ motion control motors, because the modules are a little bit higher than average motors because the ESC is built into them. So the frame is actually made so the center of gravity is right on the prop line with the IQ motors.
I was actually kind of wondering about that because I remember seeing the photos, and because they got to fit the module board. Is it on the bottom of it?
Bottom of it, yeah. So it adds, like 5 or 6 mils in the overall motor.
Now, does that connect to like a regular Betaflight
Yeah.
FC the same way, just like a signal and ground, and that's it? Or does it need extra?
Nope, that's it. Yeah, no, it's pretty standard connection setup. The issue right now is it only runs up to 4K PID loop times, which is sad because everyone's above 4K now. And
It's still not super bad or anything.
yeah.
I mean, I don't go above 8K.
Yeah. But like when I built it out, I wanted to have the next sexy generation machine. So I had it like on 1616 and I had on 3232. I wanted to be. It didn't work out.
Magic. Just keep saying
So
magic.
is there? Can you do like? How do you like change the settings for the firmware and all that stuff?
So that's the biggest thing is you have to use an FTDI tool right now.
Yeah.
Oh, is right.
There's no Betaflight pass through or nothing.
Not yet. They're working on it really hard. So there should be pass through in the next couple months.
Ooh, fancy.
Yeah. And that
Nifty.
should make things easier. Because right now, it was a pain in my butt to change settings. Like, I spend, a good half hour just desoldering stuff, resoldering stuff, changing one setting. And for beta testing, when, I want to test out all the different modes. And
you just got to leave a harness hanging from each belt housing.
Kind of, yeah. That's actually what happened. So, yeah, Unicorn's coming out. It's going to be my first, product that I'm releasing, and then I'm hoping to release some products through Hess Systems, my work, eventually.
What kind of things?
Stuff.
Cool stuff.
I want to know what cool stuff.
So the stuff that I'd probably be helping to bring to market would be stuff that would be hobby based, but could be hobby plus.
So what? It's an umbrella. It's a shoelace.
I want to make military grade equipment.
A shoe.
There's no money in the hobby market, people.
We have had lengthy discussions about this here at NewBeeDrone.
That is the vein of our existence right now.
So yeah, military stuff.
Can you give us any more details?
Okay, well I can say this. I've identified 5 key technologies within the drone market that kind of drive everything forward.
Video.
Well, that's partially one. I consider that like sensors.
Okay, sensory
So we
stuff.
have sensor fusion sensors, right? You have battery technology is a huge one. Battery technology largely holds everything back. Motor power system technology. Motor power system technologies actually had a huge boon because of X-Class. So there's a lot of really high-powered drone parts out there.
70 amp ESCs now.
120, 200 amp running.
200?
Yeah. Like APD is doing some really cool stuff.
Oh, by the way, what is the cost of the batteries for X-Class?
About $200. I mean,
don't you run one or two?
2. That's why it's.
And they're 200 a piece.
No, together.
Okay.
But it varies. I mean, originally why we went 6-cell with the original X-Class setups was because the 6-cell 5K battery was only like $60-$80.
Oh my.
And it just made it more affordable for people to get into.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was a huge thing. Is if it's not affordable for people to get into, they can't get into it. But
so I don't have a Lamborghini.
Yeah, so we have sensor fusion, battery technology, power system technology, aerodynamics, and then essentially the thing that's everyone's working on now is like the AI/smart end component of making drones more smart. So those are like the 5 key technology areas, and I'm kind of focusing on a couple.
Honestly, it sounds like you're making a robot.
Yes.
Yes, a flying robot.
Skynet is coming.
Yes.
I thought it was here.
So what happened is I got scorned by the drone industry, and then I went and joined.
This is your vengeance.
Yeah. This is how supervillains are born.
Awesome.
At least I'm on
You're on the good
yeah,
side.
I'm okay.
Good.
I'm okay. I'm not gonna be destroyed.
I feel a little conflicted since I'm on the other side of the table.
Yeah, no, you're
Literally.
going down.
Yeah, you are
Yeah,
on the other side.
you're part of the snapping.
Sorry.
Oh, Thanos. Yes. I love it.
But no, it's really interesting because like right now the hobby market, and this is kind of talking to I guess my work, is that it's kind of been known that hobbyists have had better pilots and almost better technology than a lot of the military professionals use in small UASs.
Yeah, because we're all doing it out of passion, whereas they're doing it because
They got to.
someone's like, this is your 8 to 9 or 8 to 5.
Well, that, and they don't really have the technology. Like they don't. So for example, like
Have you never heard of Area 51?
I'm saying like the technology that can be used by every soldier.
Okay.
Like you can't mass manufacture stuff that comes out of Area 51 easily. But
Probably not.
Not
the
cheaply
stuff,
anyway.
But the stuff, the thing is like I feel like this is kind of going to the Alex Jones conspiracy theory end.
Yes,
I like it.
Let's do it.
So
I like it.
I honestly believe drone racing and what we've seen with drones coming out of the market has kind of taken governments aback. Like DARPA and all the other agencies that deal with technology never predicted in a million years that drone racing would have evolved out of nothing like it did. And the technology that came from it would evolve out of it like it has. And so the technology that we have now, because of the open source community, is so developed that it's kind of leapfrogged a lot of the technology that the government currently has. I mean, they're paying $80,000 for this little hummingbird drone that can
The
almost be
helicopter.
outdone by an acro-bee.
Yeah. Oh, maneuverability wise, of course, but
But that's what I'm saying, is
Yeah.
that the hobbyist end of the drone technology has started to
It's closing the
leapfrog
gap.
yeah, because
what's
for
in
them
the
it's
military
like
end.
whatever it costs.
Well, and that's the other issue, is that cost is still an issue in the military end, because like if something is too expensive, you can't deploy it to every troop.
Right.
And I see drones of like every troop I think should have one of these things in their toolkit. They should have a little, kit with a little surveillance like scout drone that they can send out to go around a corner that they don't want to poke their head around.
You know how
Or at
many
least
acro-
like 1 or 2 per team.
You know how many?
Yeah.
You know how many BNF buy and fly acrobees you can get for $80,000?
A lot.
800.
And that's my point. So now there comes the point of where, okay, now the military has to think like, okay, the drone age is upon us.
Yeah,
the governments are starting realizing we can't regulate them away. We have to regulate with them and try to support them in some note, and also maybe take advantage of the new technologies that are coming to existence. So
Shout out DARPA. Hit me up on Facebook if you want to collab.
I have a self-driving car that I use my brain for.
But so it really comes down to like, so for instance, the way I see it, like right now, the military doesn't have like a gun maker for drones. They don't have, the person that makes like the $4,000, $5,000 drone. That's
Yeah, there's
used
no
by every military
Lockheed Martin
personnel.
for drones.
Well, Lockheed Martin.
Lockheed Martin.
Well, yeah, but
But I guess it's a small U.S. So, like for instance, the Marines, they just tripled their small U.S. budget for 2019.
really,
Yeah. So,
Brady Marines. You want to collab? You know where we are.
but that's the thing, is like they're trying to develop out the technology. They're trying to get an idea of how to best use it, what it can be used for, and that's kind of the future we're going towards, which is great because I've been able to sit down with some really high-level people in some of these three-letter agencies and tell them what these things are capable of and what they're not capable of, and kind of give them a better idea of what they actually are and what they aren't. And the community really hasn't had that till now, and that's kind of cool. Also kind of scary because now they think other things about them. But
Wait a minute. NBD.
Three-letter agency. Oh my God, we found it out.
Is that the kind of agencies you're talking about? You're talking about like CIA, YMCA.
Well,
those
three
are
letters.
4, but I mean,
Yeah.
It still
that's a
sounded good.
close.
FBI.
Yeah, that's a 3-letter. DEA. that's
DYS.
another 3
Probably in different meetings.
letters.
What is your security clearance level?
Nothing yet.
I still.
So
no,
I think
mine
I'm being.
expired.
I think right now it's like and I think I can talk about it. It's probably like they're gonna hear about it anyways.
Ooh, tell me.
Kind of groomed for it because there's the process of getting your security clearance where
Yes,
it's
there
kind
is.
of like, hey, we're gonna bring you on as a contractor. Like, okay, great, work on some stuff. Okay, great. Now here's your clearance. Now we're gonna take you to do other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
I had a top secret with SCI. I had to take a polygraph to get
What
it.
is SEI?
special compartmented information.
And for people who don't know, Chris was in the Navy.
Yeah. I had a very high clearance, but I think it expired now.
Because you were IT.
Damn it! Because I was IT and I handled, very
information
sensitive
systems.
information.
That is cool.
That took a few years to get. They were calling like people that I knew from high school, knocking on doors.
Yeah.
Then I had to be put in a polygraph, and they were like asking questions.
Christopher?
I was nervous before I got in there.
Chris will probably be someone they knock on his door and ask about me at one point if things continue.
Yeah. They'll knock on my boat and I'll
like,
just
hey,
take off. I'm out.
But yeah, the other thing with Hess Systems, they want to bring me on as a sponsored pilot and to actually give me the resources I need to compete.
What? So that's dope.
I'll be probably going back to racing giant drones under Hess's flag.
That's
do they need another pilot?
So.
Do they need another pilot? Because I'm asking for a friend.
We'll find out. My hope is to have a fleet of drones here.
Is this like a big budget company, like military grade budget?
Hess, yes. Hess.
Yeah. I need to know for a friend immediately.
Hess does all right.
They do okay.
The hobby market can only do so much.
And it's really interesting because and again that goes to the technology. Like X-class drones and the power systems really didn't exist before that became a thing, and so now that it's a thing, it's really interesting what kind of drones could be built on a professional end with these systems. Really interesting. Like not even like blowing stuff up, just like really interesting non-combative uses for these machines that could save lives. And that's what really has me excited about the use of the technology.
You know, since you have all this insider information about all this kind of developing technology and stuff, I want to get your opinion on something that I haven't really been able to ask other people. I know Amazon's been trying to get into the drone business for doing delivery stuff, and it was kind of in the news for a while, and I haven't heard anything about it lately. Do you know anything about that?
Not Amazon specifically, but I know Google's been granted permission over Vermont. I believe it's Vermont for delivery. And then there's another company, Matternet. They contacted me recently about looking for pilots for their USPS contract.
Really?
That's going to. So that might be some insider information that people don't know about.
That is very cool.
I'd apply for UPS too. Or no, USPS. Never mind. I thought it was UPS.
And
the logistics for all that must be crazy, though.
And that's kind of what Matternet does, is the logistical end of package delivery with drones. Really neat company. ZoeFPV works for them, for example.
Colby.
Yeah. I almost worked for them. Almost wanted to work for them too. But yeah, so they're doing some really cool stuff with deliveries, and that's really coming back to probably the biggest topic of this podcast.
Do it.
Drop it.
FAA regulations. Yeah, so FAA regulations.
That word just.
I mean, I've been really busy with life and the universe and work the last 6 months. I have not been able to give enough time to talk about this issue, and that is the new regulations potentially coming through with the FAA.
What?
A bunch of new stuff.
What?
A bunch of new stuff. Have you read the new report that was leaked? The memo.
No.
For those
no.
for my friend who may not know, can you please exchange?
No, I have not.
So this is really what upsets me, is that you guys are a drone company. You don't even know what the legislators are doing.
Whoa. That's above my pay grade.
But that's the same thing. Is like a whole community doesn't really know what the heck is going on right now, and that scares me to death, because what's going on right now is kind of the encroachment of our rights. For instance, their FAA is going to try to make it so that all hobbyists will have to use the LAN system in order to fly within 5 miles of an airport.
Hey, isn't that the thing that TBS has on some of their Crossfire stuff?
LAANC?
Yeah, where it shows like as a little beacon on radar or something like that?
It's something you have to use to a phone app to request permission.
Oh, okay. But that's within 5 miles of an airport.
Which most people live within.
Really?
A lot of people do.
Yeah. Majority of the United States.
Oh.
Yeah. It's a thing. Populated areas generally have airports next to them.
Okay. You know what? Everywhere I've ever lived, it's been like a 20 to 30 minute drive to get to an airport, so.
But it was 5 minutes? Or was it 5 miles?
5 miles away.
Yeah. Because Vegas, it'll take you 20 minutes to go 2 miles.
It'll still take me 20 minutes to get to the airport here, but still we're within 5 miles of an airport.
I wonder what the deal is with military, because we got the Air Force Base.
So fun story.
Another one.
I like this.
In my early days, when I was in 29 Palms, I was working on a project with the BrickBot, and it was a drone that was going to lift a 5-pound brick, and it was literally like a 4-inch drone that lifted a 5-pound brick.
Hexa?
No, quadcopter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was pretty impressive, but I was testing it about less than 1,000 feet away from restricted airspace. Like, I could walk a street and a half over, and I would be in military airspace next to the largest marine base in the United States, live fire. Base. You know, no big deal.
Yeah.
It's no big deal. So I'm flying, and I got kind of like what's the word?
PTSD?
No, well, kind of from the experience, but I started like chasing cars down that road, but I wouldn't chase them down in the military airspace. I would always go away from that line.
Yeah.
But still, I would be chasing vehicles from, coming from a military base off of a military base.
I wonder how many of those could be high-ranking people.
Well, eventually it made the news. But the news misreported it as saying that there's drones flying into and over the base.
Oh, of course they did.
And at that point in time, I immediately called my boss and I didn't do it.
I swear I didn't.
I swear I didn't do it. Can you notify the base and tell them it wasn't me?
Please.
Please. So I stopped flying for a week after that.
Yeah, probably not a bad idea.
It was fun though. Because with the long range of that road, and there's nothing out there, it's just open, empty desert. You can fly for miles. So I could literally chase a car for miles down the road.
What size props was it using?
5-inch.
And you're doing long range stuff, carrying a 5-pound brick?
Oh no! That was with my personal drone. The 5-pound brick stuff was with a different setup. I wasn't chasing anybody with that.
Bless you. He sneezed and he tried to mute his mic.
Do I keep saying
everybody just stared at him what is he doing?
Yeah, I was moving my hand. Keep going, guys. Thanks a lot.
No, we're all gonna listen to this.
You just made this awkward.
So yeah, it was a fun little moment, and I'm gonna assure everybody I was not flying in that airspace. I've been pretty good about not breaking any laws while I fly.
Of course not.
Of course not.
You would never do anything like that.
Ever.
I mean, I would, but...
Now you say long range with 5-inch. Traditionally, nowadays, people don't do long range with 5-inch stuff. It's always 7-inch, 6-inch kind of stuff. So
3-inch. Is that weird?
I don't know if I would consider what you do long range.
Come on, I go long.
Just because you put a crossfire nano, it does not mean you're doing long range.
Yeah, bro, I go far.
He goes far.
Your battery does not.
Oh, yeah, it does.
It could.
It depends if you're using the 18650s. Do you know about that?
Zoe, did that.
Oh.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Later.
I didn't really. Yeah, maybe another podcast.
A follow-up to what I'm working on.
Yeah. Oh, it's that kind of hush-hush stuff.
Well, no, not necessarily. It's just there's a battery design that I kind of have an idea for, and one of the concepts is actually releasing it as an open source kit for people. Because
build your own battery cell. What could go wrong?
Actually, a lot less than you'd think, because it would be using a proper case that you just drop the batteries into, and you don't solder anything.
Okay.
But yeah, so there's that, again, identifying battery technology.
Yes.
I can talk about this because it's open and this is all information that everyone knows. So 18650s, a lot of people know Vape Nation. That's kind of how 18650s kind of became a thing. They were used largely in vape mods.
What were they used before that mainly?
Vape mods? No, I don't know. There was an interesting size. So 18650s ended up getting adopted by a lot of car manufacturers for their electric vehicles.
Right.
And so that created an industry of creating higher amperage 18650 cells that have created what we have now, which is high discharge lithium-ion batteries.
Right.
Which you can get 40 amps out of one of the cells, which is a lot
18650
for an 18650. Yeah.
What?
But you have to hunt for these cells because like you can get the same batch of like from the same batch from one manufacturer, and only a few of those cells in that batch are actually going to be able to put out that amount. Because a lot of people haven't been testing them for actual 40 amp usage.
Yeah, it's like, what's the capacity? Good enough?
Pretty much, yeah.
Good enough.
And then just slap a sticker on it, which largely is done in the FPV community too. Like,
they would never.
You mean the C rating is not always accurate?
They would never lie about that.
Oh my God.
So yeah, that's a thing. But the issue with lithium-ion batteries is that they work, while they do work, a drone tends to be very high draw, short amount of time for throttle corrections. And that voltage spike tends to cause a lot of drain and kind of basically damaging the battery mid-flight. So the concept is to create a two-phase battery. You have a supercapacitor plus the 18650s, and the supercapacitor acts as a buffer for the 18650s. So you have even higher voltage spikes available to you for quick maneuvers, and then you have the longevity of the 18650s that don't get hammered by the voltage spikes.
That's actually a really cool concept.
Yeah. I talked to Kelvin about this because I had this idea a little while back. He had some, I forget what his concerns were with it, but maybe
you know what my concern is? Because of us working on our own ESC, 4-in-1 ESC, and doing capacitors and stuff and testing external capacitors, is you have the supercapacitor, but what happens if you crash and you damage the supercapacitor? It goes boom.
Pops?
Yeah.
What happens if you crash and you have a battery catch fire?
Then it catches fire.
It usually slowly starts smoking out, but like a capacitor, a supercapacitor's a lot more bang, a lot more quickly, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's also why it'd be in a hard shell case, but...
So then it's like a little condensed, pressurized bomb. If it's sealed in a case.
I mean, so is a Tesla, but...
You can have those safe...
yeah, but you're not puncturing cells on a Tesla as easily as a racing drone.
Yeah, that is the thing.
Hey, I'm still excited. I'm not saying don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, so the applications of 18650s, I mean... The goal is to get to a point where you can race with them, because if you could race with an 18650 setup, then you can make the races last more than 2 minutes. And that is honestly, in my opinion, and this is me going back to I want to make the community in drone racing better. If we can fix this thing of short race times, then we all of a sudden make racing way more interesting, because it's no longer about these short, fast stints. It's more about the long game, staying in the air, and getting the most out of your battery technology and getting the most out of your battery swapping on the ground. But that's, a whole different format, whole different idea. So I've been testing out a bunch of stuff with that for work, trying to essentially develop out the first, I don't know if it's the first two-phase battery, but a two-phase battery that the community can use and actually test out for themselves and, verify.
Secrets are coming out now. Let me write this down.
Write it down.
And posted.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I noticed within the drone community especially, there's this kind of thing of a hype game where hype tends to drive the market forward, and a lot of the time hype is not all that revolutionary different than what we have existing already.
Listen, I have Yeezys.
Wait, really?
So I know he
gosh.
Don't
They're not real.
Okay.
Okay.
And I did not buy them.
Okay.
Cheesies.
Cheesies.
Okay. Okay, I know.
Your son's the one with the real Yeezys.
Yeah, he does. Bastard.
You need to beat him some more. Beat the Yeezys off of him.
Cameron, when I get
home...
He
doesn't need Yeezys. He's got an Oculus Quest. What are you talking about?
True story,
No, his son.
Wait.
Chris's son has the real Yeezys.
Wait, you raised a kid that has
No. Grandma bought them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Chris would never allow this.
Okay.
But what are you going to tell your mom? No? Come on.
Yes.
I can try.
Yeah,
my mom is Filipino. She will
you obviously have never been hit with a sandal before.
From 20 feet away. Pinpoint accuracy, bro. Headshot.
People are like, oh, I got beat with a bell. I got hit with a paddle. Like, chancla.
The power of the chancla compels you.
Compels you. Oh, jeez, man. Man.
So much stuff.
Yeah.
I know.
So when's the 3D Whoop coming out?
I knew this was... I honestly was surprised we got this far.
You guys are joking. That's all I was going to talk about this entire episode.
Can you blame us?
Not really, no.
You talked about it before the podcast started, too.
I know.
Before you were in here, she's like... Oh, she was like, 3D Whoop. Like, damn it.
So there is progress, right? The Whoop boards will be arriving very shortly, within a week or so.
Whoop, whoop.
We have some motors that we're testing, some developments with the propellers. So, and the frame, we're slowly trucking forward. It's just we have a lot on our plate.
It's hard. Like I kind of told them the first Whoop we were working on was 2-cell, and it was like too much. And I was like, yo, we need to go smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, now we're going smaller. And I'm super excited. This should be like the first like 1S 3D Whoop proper.
That'll actually fly well and be a good trainer. And
yeah.
Because I've been looking at 3D like for a while, but even with the Whoop, I was like, this doesn't make sense in my head right now. Like when I got it to flip over and like hover for like half a second, I was like, I'm done. I just like stopped the DVR, cut it off. I'm done. I'm
was
good.
it Laughing that did?
And then Laughing, did one and then like flipped back over and recovered it.
Yeah.
Oh, well
he was
done.
telling me about that. Like I was the first one to successfully fly that Whoop.
True story.
You know, I didn't even know this. When was this? I was not around.
A couple months ago.
It was historic.
Huh.
Yeah, but yeah, no, it's kind of funny. I've bought a small Nano CPX and a Nano S2 3D helicopter.
Mm-hmm.
The bar is set really low, guys.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Like super low.
Super
We're gonna knock this out of the park, guys. Because that thing flies like horribly. It's so bad. Like there's no power to it. It's just it's not gonna be too hard to actually make. I think a 3D Whoop that's gonna surpass what's already available on 1-cell capability of a 3D helicopter.
With the camera too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's funny. Like 3D helicopter, this micro, it had 5 independent motors.
5?
Yeah.
Wait, what?
So instead of using servos for part of the linkage system, they actually used brushed motors to change the linkages.
Oh, okay, for the swash plate.
Yeah. So it had 5 motors all together. So, you know, you're thinking like, okay, you got this 1S battery, you got 5 motors, plus all this other stuff. Like, it's heavier than this Whoop's going to be. So even from that standpoint, I think it's going to be good. So I'm excited for it. I know all good things come in time, and it's better to wait for the right stuff than to,
rush out to be the first.
And then end up with something that everyone's on.
Samsung Fold.
Is there a crease in that?
Wait, so when are you guys making a folding drone?
I can fold this one right now.
But you can't fold it back though.
No!
You stop!
Stop it! No! Oh god!
What
no,
are you doing?
it. Oh wait, no, it's
he
okay.
popped out the
See,
grommet.
like, fold?
Oh, hey, it does fold back.
See?
Okay, so the NewBeeDrone Acro B drone does fold back. That's really durable. Wow.
That's why we call it the super durable frame.
What the frick? I am
notice?
literally bending it motor to motor, and it's not busting. What? That
You're
is
welcome.
awesome.
Samsung, call me up.
Yeah, what the heck, Samsung?
You got how many millions in development? We got it with a $4 cockroach frame.
Right?
Done. Next.
Amateurs.
Right?
Yeah. But if you would like to work together, please hit me up.
Please send an email to person.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so
that was a lot of stuff to cover.
It was, and you know what? This is our longest podcast ever. Usually we just do an hour, and it has been about an hour and 50 minutes.
Oh, wow.
I told my mom before I left, like, Mom, she asked me, how long is the podcast going to be? I'm like, it's probably an hour, but it's going to go 2 hours today.
She knew.
She predicted.
She
And
knew.
we still have a ton of stuff we could talk about,
know.
but we got to draw,
We got to draw in
a
somewhere.
future one,
More. I'm in the area. You
Yeah.
can always do it again.
Yeah. We didn't even talk about your FPV RV.
Next time.
Next time, okay.
It is pretty cool.
Leave.
Maybe we should do a vlog for that one. Show a little some.
That's not a bad idea.
Right?
Incorporate it into the next Elf versus Santa video.
Oh, God.
I'm okay with this. I'll jump off.
Like a Breaking Bad Elf and Santa cooking in the RV.
Yes.
Oh, Jesse.
Science. Magnets.
Science, biatch.
What are the magnets everyone uses? The N
M52s?
Yeah, yo, Mr. Y. Magnets, N52s.
Magnets.
Yeah. All right. Well,
I do the knocking.
Yeah, I do the whooping. We'll put a pin in it for now, and then we'll pick up. Dang, so much I want to talk about. Anyway, yeah. All right, Zoe. Well, thank you for coming on and giving us like 2 hours of your life that you'll never get back.
Ever get back.
You can revisit it though after we post it, but you won't get it back.
I don't know.
You'll just waste more time watching it.
Yeah. Any shout outs or plugs you got to give before you leave?
Shout out to IQ Motion Control. If you want the sexiness that is the future of drone technology and motors, check out IQ Motion Control. NewBeeDrone, thank you guys. You're kind of a sponsor in a weird way. And check out I would say Hype Train. I'm weirdly sponsored by 2 motor companies. I don't know how that works. Yeah. So Hype Train and IQ.
Cool.
But I like one more than the other. So I mean, it's hard. Anyways, I love you, Hype Train. Jack Capper, don't hate me.
Papa Kappa.
Papa Kappa, don't hate me.
Yeah.
And I want to say thank you to myself and Hess Systems for believing in me and bringing me onto the team. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. I can't wait to do some more cool stuff and not take off my lunch break all the time to go do podcasts.
Is that what happened today?
A little bit. No, it's all good.
Whoops.
Oh no. Yeah. See what you did,
and we didn't even give her lunch.
Not yet.
Not
yet. We got chips.
Hell yeah.
And that's it. So
well,
we can drive somewhere
chips.
Though. Yeah, we can drive you to the store where they got more chips.
Yes.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning in to this week's NewBeeCast. As again, I'm your host Goose here with ZoeFPV and Mr. DZ Drones Chris Davis, and we will see you on the next one, guys.
Bye.
Bye.